So if you have stock in Nvidia or AMD, you just got some great news today. So the US government is actually letting Nvidia as well as AMD start shipping their chips to China again. There was a pause where the US government did not want them to do that. So it's basically the same thing with AMD. They can resume sales of their MI308 AI chips to China after the US Commerce Department approved license applications for review, which is a policy shift from previous restrictions. So obviously the two main AI chip companies that are battling against each other both are able to send chips to China again, which is going to be a huge boost in business. Nvidia is up 4.04% today on this news, and AMD is up 6.41% today on this news as well.
Hey, good morning, Carl. So Wall Street, it's busy calculating the revenue rebound, but here is the bigger picture. This isn't just about selling chips again. It's about keeping China inside Nvidia's software ecosystem. Now, the H20 chip, it is actually slower than many of the alternatives on the market, including Huawei's Ascend, but China's AI developers, they're still building on Nvidia's CUDA. That is the software layer that tells the chips what to do and how to train the AI models. So it's like an operating system for AI development that everyone from Alibaba to DeepSeek build on. And that is the real lock-in. Had Washington fully blocked Nvidia from selling even downgraded chips like the H20, it would not have stopped Chinese AI. It would have just accelerated Huawei's push to build a homegrown alternative, something David Sachs was talking about earlier on in the hour. Now, Huawei is already reportedly redesigning its next AI chip to make it easier for developers to switch off CUDA. The goal is to win over Chinese companies.
So as you can see, they are still dominating in China, but Huawei is starting to try and catch up to build their own homegrown version of the Nvidia ecosystem that they're using. So great news for Nvidia, especially in the meantime until Huawei can actually catch up.
The valuation is not as stretched as everyone would argue. I don't know that you buy it here. We were adding during the April tariff tantrum. We picked some off at $108 a share. We added to the position while we've been trimming Broadcom, which has actually outperformed Nvidia over the last year. But if you look at fiscal year earnings growth, 2026 is supposed to be 45%, then 33% in 27, 14% in 28, and it's currently trading at a forward PE of 40. So you're actually paying less than 1 times on a price earnings to growth basis. So unless you think the growth in this company is done, I don't think you sell the stock here. I don't think you necessarily buy more, but on dips, you step in and add to the holdings. I would also just point out AMD is actually up more because their M1 chip is going to get reinstated as well, and that's going to benefit the whole space. So the AI trade is what as an investor I'm focused on. I've been talking about productivity for the last 3 years, the analogies to the 90s, and the need to pivot to old economy companies that are invested in the new technologies, and then the providers of
So in other words, she's saying she doesn't necessarily say just buy more Nvidia necessarily, but that this is a great time, obviously not to sell, but to either buy dips or to hold, because they don't see any pause in the growth of Nvidia, maybe even AMD, depending on if AMD can keep up. Obviously, they're always kind of considered like second place behind Nvidia, and so that's why the returns just haven't been quite the same.
Sure. I think, John, it's hard to make a long-term forecast with any kind of geopolitical event. But for now, I think it's a good sign that there is easing of tensions between U.S. and China. We saw this with the easing of...
That's a great point, too. Even if you just stop there, you have the easing of tensions with China, which in general was a big part of what caused the market to go down this year in the first place. So you see that dip that basically all these companies had. You basically have most of these companies with a V-shaped graph year to date for 2025. That's because the tensions for the tariffs, especially with China in particular, we still have a lot of tariff tensions right now, but the one with China was one of the main indicators as we saw. Once that got resolved and they came to some sort of agreement there and they decided not to do like 200% tariffs or whatever it was, then things started to go back up. So even though they have tariff situations ongoing with many other countries, the one with China is the big deal that really kind of seems like it had a big part in turning this around. Of course, the delay and the deadline to get these deals done was part of that as well, but I really believe China is the main one that we needed to get along with for the market to turn around this year.
His record run, Gene Munster of Deepwater Asset Management joins us now. You're listening. Maybe you think you can weigh in on AI, but someone said we can't quantify what this means for Nvidia. You tried to do that, didn't you? You actually, if they are able, how much of that write-off comes back? It reminds me of a bank when they bring back reserves in, and all of a sudden they didn't need to have those reserves.
Right on. So the impact, I think Tim Mimi mentioned a little bit earlier, it was 15% of their business was this lower level chip. Non-direct sales to China is probably another 10%. So think of a quarter of NVIDIA's business is China related. We're talking about that 15%. And
possibly a quarter, the equivalent of a quarter of NVIDIA's business is now back in play. So of course the stock is going to jump. It could continue to see more and more all-time highs from here, at least in the short term. Again, Huawei is trying to compete with them and build an in-house solution for China, but who knows how long that will take. And Nvidia is one of the most valuable companies. I think it actually just became the most valuable company in history as far as a publicly traded company at market cap. So you're talking about a company that's already the leader. They are continuing their massive amount of growth, and they just got like access to 25% of their past business back thanks to the US government easing tensions with China. It's a big deal.